Hello, everybody. I'm a few minutes early, so I figured I'd hop on and say hello. It's already been a very busy day for me, but that's what happens when you're the boss. I already helped a customer out on her long arm, unloaded a whole bunch of groceries. It's been a busy day. Today is symphony. We're doing block 3 and 4. And some of it is repeat. We've already done these portions of the block, so it'll be good exercise in helping you remember how to do these type of blocks. So I won't be going over the flying geese portion in block 3, but I will again do flying geese in block 4 for you, just to give you kind of repeat lesson and help the block go along a little bit faster, I think. Think. Hold on, I want to look at something while I wait. Once you come on, let me know and we can get going. Oh, I have crazy stuff. I got the hiccups really bad. Yeesh, kabibble. And again, Miss Nola is snoring. I can hear her snoring. It's really quite funny. We've got just a few more minutes. And I can't wait because I think I'm going to start this quilt tomorrow. My shining together with all of my cotton, shades of cotton headquarters. I think that I'm going to play with that tomorrow. Maybe. We'll see. I still have to cut some of my fabric for Lakeshore Hosta for next week. So much fun. So many quilts. Never enough time to do anything. And I've already got threads everywhere. Oh, it's part of the whole quilting. It's quilting and sewing. You can't get away from threads. Anyway, if there's a quilt or a project or a technique that you guys need some help with or want to learn, let me know. I can build classes around just about any technique or pattern that you want to learn. Right now, we're working on 2 quilts, paper piecing, Judy Niemeyer, and working with Studio 180, Deb Tucker's rulers, which are fun. I love the Tucker rulers completely. They're my favorite. 3 more minutes. Okay, I'm going to start a little bit early. And when and if you show up, just give me a heads up and say hi so that I know everybody can hear me and everybody gets it. All right. So this is what I've done so far on block 3. And I'm going to show you how we do this right here. Okay. So basically it's a half square triangle. We put both of our fabrics right side together for the 2 smaller triangles. And we draw a diagonal line on the back of the fabric and sew a 1/4 inch on both sides. And then you're going to cut this in half right on the drawing line. So now you have an oversized half square triangle. You're not going to trim these up yet. Okay. And I'm going to iron them towards the dark side. So let me go ahead and do that real quick. I forgot to heat up my iron. Isn't that always the case? Not yet. Do, 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 do. Always waiting, waiting. Hurry up and wait. There's one. There's two. At least it's not cold today. Thank goodness. I was getting really tired of the cold. All right. So now you have your two half square triangles, okay? Well, now we're going to take our second fabric, and this square is going to be, or I should say our third fabric. The square is going to be bigger than you need, but you're going to lay them right sides together. And then just eyeball, making sure you've got enough all the way around, somewhat even. We've got our seam going this way. So now we're going to draw a line in the opposite diagonal. From corner to corner. Now we're going to sew a quarter of an inch on each side of this line. And if you're using a quarter inch foot with a guide, it's real simple. All you're going to do is put the guide on your line. And then you'll be able to sew a quarter of an inch away. I chain piece an awful lot. I don't even stop to cut my thread. I just pull it out a little bit and put my next piece in. Lift up my foot, turn them around, pull it out just a little bit, line it up, and sew again. It may not seem like it saves a lot of time, but you do enough of these and you'll find that it does save a fair bit. Plus, with my machine, which is a brother, it's kind of the same with Baby Locks. They have a tendency, if you don't chain piece, of wanting to pull fabric down into the throat plate. There we go. Now we're going to cut on this line. Okay. And there you go. Now these will have to be trimmed up. I recommend you're going to want to iron these towards the piece side. So we're just going to lay the piece side up and iron all of them. And then we'll trim them up. Actually, I think today I'm going to work on some more Legos. I'm having fun. I think I've got maybe 10 more bags of Legos to get these bookends done. I've been kind of spacing them out because if I don't do that, I will finish it in one day. All right. Now we're going to trim these up. And I got to look back at my pattern and see how small. I think it's going to be 2.5, but always be safe. Better to be safe than sorry. And no, 3, maybe. Wait a minute. Wrong pattern. These are going to be 2.5. So when I trim up blocks like this, I always start where the 2 smaller triangles are. On the Tucker trimmer, your 1/2 inch measurements are here, and the full whole inch measurements are on the opposite side. So it's 2.5. So we're going to use the 2.5 diagonal line here. And we're going to use this diagonal line right on this seam. It's easier if I stand it. Okay. On one side and the top. I always keep my ruler where it is before I'm sure to make sure I cut everything. Then we're going to turn it 180. And we're going to use our 2.5 inch mark here with the diagonal on the diagonal seam and the 2.5 inch diagonal line here on the main seam. And then cut them off. There you go. I got a few more so you'll get used to seeing this. Oh. One more. Oh. Well, see what happens when you move it before you're sure it cut. Well done. That's why you got to make sure it cuts through. And I keep saying I got to change my blade, but I forget. One of these days I'll remember to change my blade. There you go. All right, let me get rid of my mess. So now we've got to make these little corner units. Okay. In order to do that, oh my goodness, my brain doesn't want to work. You know what it? This one is going to go there. And this one is going to go here. This one goes here. And that one goes there. So now we've got a small mini 4-patch. So I'm going to sew these two together and these two together. Making sure I have the right fabric on top. Hold on. And then this one. Now we've got these two. And then I'm going to iron these towards the white. So the seam, make sure the white is on top when I set my seam, and then iron them over. That will give us the best opportunity to line up our seams. The lovely thing about using the Studio 180 rulers is you never lose your points, and your blocks are exactly the size they need to be. Yes, you waste a tiny sliver of fabric, but in the grand scheme of things, that's a minor thing compared to having blocks that are the wrong size or wonky, or you cut off the points. It's just not worth it. All right. This one goes there. Goes there. I think I might have sewed this one wrong. Let's see. Maybe not. Nope, I didn't. Okay. So here are our two pieces here and our two pieces here. This is really easy to sew together and line up because we've ironed the top one towards the white, the bottom one towards the white square, so they will both butt right up against each other and line up perfectly. And it's easy to do this if you look at it from the top. You can actually watch and feel them butt up against each other. Here's one. And here's the other. Now, if they feel bulky, if you're seeing, then more than likely it's not lined up correctly, because they should be nice and flat. Whoops, wrong one. Now I'm going to sew these together. As you can see, I put my needle on an angle. That's so I can start sewing here and stop with my needle down in the seam before I take the pin out. Often just the task or just the process of taking the pin out is enough to misalign your seams. So if you stop with your needle down in the seam, you're less likely to mess it up or misalign them. Now stop with my needle down in the seam. And by putting the pin on an angle, that means I get plenty of room to stop where I need to before I get to my pin. Because you never want to sew over your pins, ever. I know many of us were taught that way when we were younger, but nowadays it just ends in trouble. You may get away with sewing over your pins 1, 2, 3, 4, or half a dozen times or more. All it takes is one time, and at the very least, you break a needle. At worst, the pin can ricochet up and hit you in the eye, or you can bust your machine, and it could be a costly repair. Let's see. All right. Now, on these flying geese, I iron the seam down. So here, it doesn't, I guess it doesn't really matter. Well, actually it does. So in here, on this one, I want to iron my seam up. And on this one, I'm going to iron my seam up. That way I can line them up with the spinal piece. That's why laying them out always is better. If you keep putting them back the way they're supposed to be and laying them down where they're supposed to go, you'll save yourself a lot less aggravation. And once now we just have to sew these together. Look at how wonderful the points line up. Lovely. So now we're going to do the same method of lining these up. And these will line up too. Stop with my needle down, hold the pin, make sure these 2 points are still lined up. Down. perfect. We're about as perfect as we can be. There's not too many things perfect in quilting. Now I'm going to do this side. And it's going to butt right up against each other nicely. Stop with the needle down, pull your pin out. There you go. Now I'm going to iron these. But I have to look to make sure I know where I got to iron them. These are going to be ironed out towards the ends, these seams. This is block 3. All right. Now let's lay it down and pin these two. You just got one more seam. We'll be good. I'm going to line up my seams. And I'm going to sew this with this smaller piece on top. So I make sure I don't sew too far into this flying geese. And this one up. So you got a lot of X's. I'm going to make sure I stay on top side of this X, the top side of this X, and the top side of this X. All right, Miss Nola. Miss Nola heard a noise and got scared. Hold on. Relax. It's okay. It's all right. Pull it down. All right. So we've got an X right here with and an X right there and an X right there. We want to stay one thread width on the top of the X where they come together. That way we don't cut off our points. I always lift my foot up to make sure my seams stay where they're supposed to be. Oh, don't stick yourself. go. There is block 3. So it looks pretty good. Not too shabby. Now, poor Nola, I'm so afraid. We're going to work on block 4. Okay, the first I'm going to do is make flying geese. The easiest way to do flying geese is to do 4 at a time. Relax, Nola. Hold on. I got to calm poor Nola, little baby. It's okay. Scaredy cat. All right, go lay down. The easiest way to do flying geese is to do 4 at a time. This is the body. These are the tabs. Okay. So you're gonna have a bigger bigger body square with 2 smaller squares on top. And draw a diagonal line, so 1/4 of an inch on each side of the line, and then we cut it. She's looking for a place to hide. Now we're going to iron our smaller triangles up. Lay down, Nora. Miss Nola is a scaredy cat. Every noise she hears, she freaks out. She hates loud noises and cars going by with a lot of exhaust and fireworks and thunderstorms. Just about anything that's loud, she's not happy. So when you have a fire truck or an ambulance go by, she gets upset. Good girl. Good girl. All right. All right. So it looks like we made 2 hearts. Okay. Now you're going to take another of the smaller squares and put it in this corner. So it's right side to right side. And then you're going to sew 1/4 of an inch on each side of the line. Okay, you start with your needle down in this little dip and come down. And when we turn it around, we're going to end in this little dip. And again, I just chain piece these. Don't bother cutting my thread or anything. With my foot, pull a little bit extra thread, turn them around, line them up, and keep on sewing. Cut my threads. Now I'm going to cut right on the line that we drew. And we're going to have our flying geese that we're going to trim up. Whoops. Almost dropped it. See? All right. Now I'm going to iron these over, and then I'll show you how to trim up these flying geese. By the end of this quilt, you're going to be really familiar with using all of the basic Studio 180 rulers and making flying geese like crazy. It becomes really, really easy the more you do it. This is the only way I like to do flying geese now, because very rarely, it's not like you need one flying geese. You need usually a lot. And it's very rare for one block nut to have at least 2 to 4 block flying geese. Most of the time it's common to have 4. All right, now I'm going to take our flying geese ruler. These are supposed to be 2.5 by, let me make sure I've got this right. Two and a half by 2 inch by 3 inch. So it'll be 2.5 by 3.5, I believe. 2 inch by 3.5. That's it. Okay. Two inch by 3.5 is what they're gonna be. So I'm gonna put my 2 inch mark right here. So 1.5 is here, 2.5 is here, and in between is my 2 inch. Right on my peak. And I'm gonna cut one side and then the other. I'm gonna turn it around. Put my 3.5 mark here. And my cross right there. It's easy to do this standing up. There you go. Do it again. Oh, I forgot to iron one. Hold on. Lay down, Noah. Relax. Almost done. One more. Lay down, Noah. All right. Now let's see what we're doing. All right. Now we have our traditional flying geese. Okay, so we've got both squares right side together with a line drawn down the diagonal, and then we're going to cut these apart and we'll have, I'm not flying geese, half square triangles, I'm sorry. Lay down, Noah. Oop, I got a nose under my arm. It's okay, relax. All right, now we're going to iron these towards the dark side and then trim them up. Square them up, I should say. All right, now the half square triangles are going to be trimmed up to 2.5. Maybe, no, 2 inch. This is all in the directions. Just got to take it one step at a time. You can go through and cut all of your fabric, but I find it's just easy to cut them one block at a time. No need to spend hours and hours trying to figure out. Just go one block at a time. It's easier that way. If you want to cut all your fabric at once, still do it one block at a time. Put them in, plastic Ziploc bags or whatever and label them block 1, block 2, block 3, and go like that. All right. Now, let me see. Yeah. Okay. So these are going to be 2 inch. So up until now, we've done things 2.5 or by ½ inch. These are 2 inch. So we're going to use this side. I'm going to put, these are not going to be trimmed up too much. So we've got our 2 inch here and we've got our diagonal line. So let's get the diagonal line in there and make sure the 2 inch line is covered. Now I'm going to do a 2-inch line here. Whoops. So we've got the 2-inch line here, and we've got the diagonal 2-inch line on the seam. It's not difficult. You just got to take it one step at a time. And this is block, we're now working on block 4. There you go. So this is one part of the block, the first part. This will be the center. And then we have other parts to work on. So let's sew this one together, and then we'll get to the last part. The last part are more of these blocks, which are going to go like this. Going down, Noah. All right. Well, hold on. Okay. So first thing I'm going to do is sew these flying geese onto our center block. And I'm going to iron these seams once we're done towards the center block. All right. So we're going to iron these toward the center block. So we're going to keep the center block on top when we set our seams. All right. Now we've got our center. Now we're going to iron sew these together so that we can finish the center part. Neat. Let's try it one at a time. I'm going to put the other side on. All right. These seams are ironed towards the center. So the other two are going to be ironed to the outside so we can line up our seams. All right, now we're just going to have to line these up and sew them down. Lining them up because we've already pressed our seam in opposite directions is going to be easy. Just butt them up against each other and pin. we go. And we're gonna put this one on. And line it up again. Got an X right here. So again, you want to make sure here and here, where you've already pieced these, you're going to be on the top part of the X, just like a thread width away. That way, all of these points will not be cut off. One more little tiny bit closer. It's hard sometimes to see from this angle with the camera there. If you're too far away from that X, it won't look right either. There you go. Now these, let's see, where are these seams going? These seams are going to go I think these are going to go up, or I should say out. And for those of you who are wondering, it's best pressing my spray bottle, which is a starch alternative, especially when you're doing a lot of small piecing. It'll stop your pieces and your fabric from stretching. It makes lining up your seams and everything else a lot easier, at least in my experience. I love best press. All right, there we go. Now I get to show you the final part. Okay, making these is really, really simple. I'm going to start with a half square triangle, which we did. And then you're going to take that half square triangle and put it on a larger square, which is your larger square here, larger triangle, I should say. Draw a line, and then that line, that diagonal line is opposite the seam for your half square triangle. And so a quarter of an inch on both sides of the line. And then you can cut it. Cut the line. And we're going to iron these and trim them up. There you go. All of these, so you're going to make 8 of these. Half of them you're going to iron towards the triangled piece. And the other half, we're going to iron them towards the larger triangle. These, because I've already done the others, are ironed towards the larger triangle. Reason that you do that is just to make it easy to line everything up. All right, now we're going to square these up. So we're going to start. Let me push these up out of the way so we can make more room so you can see what we're doing. Okay, so I start with the smaller triangle. These are going to be 3.5 inches. So I want this diagonal 3.5 inch mark on my seam, my large seam, and I want this diagonal on the small seam, making sure I have enough all the way around for the 3.5 inches. I'm going to turn it 180. Put my 3.5 inch this way. Make sure the 3.5 inches on the seam, and this diagonal line is on the smaller seam. There you go. Let's do it again. My 3.5 inch diagonal here is on my large seam. This diagonal is on the smaller seam. And I got to make sure I've got enough on all 4 sides for my 3.5 inch square. I'm going to turn it 180. Okay, we've got our 3.5 inch diagonal on the large seam, this other diagonal on my small seam, and the 3.5 inch corner here. There we go. All right, we're ready to put this block together. So, whoops. Here we go. Boop, boop, boop. There we go. So we're going to sew these two together, sew these two together, sew them to our center, and then we've got these 4 to sew together. So it's super easy. And these should, if you did them half and half, meaning half on one side of the seam and half on the other side of the seam, they should line up. Hold on. All right, let's try that again. There we go. So I'm going to line this corner up, these corner seams, and put a pin in it, and a pin right here. The reason I put the pin here is to remind me which way to sew this. Again, let's see. Line it up. I'm going to put a pin and then a pin here, just to remind me to sew it on this line and not on this side. Put another one. Right here. One more. Almost sewed it the wrong way. Okay, so it's going to go this way. Sometimes even I get confused. That's why you go lay them back down just to make sure you don't mess it up. All right. Almost done. I hope you guys are enjoying this quilt. I think this is a great quilt. It's not boring, that's for sure, because we're learning different blocks. And it's not difficult if you just take it one block at a time. All right. Now, what are we going to do with these? We got to iron them, but I'm not sure which way we're ironing them. Ah, they want you to iron the seams open on this one. All you got to do is take it one step at a time. Okay? That's it. It's not difficult. And when in doubt, read your directions again. You'll always have this videos in these classes to go back to if you have questions. Almost done. One more. Let me know how you're liking this quilt. When you get your blocks done, post them. I would love to see what colors you and what fabrics you're using. And I'm sure others would love to see them. Everybody loves to see completed quilts and blocks. And you give other people ideas. All right. Let's see what we're doing. Here we go. I love this one. This one is so pretty. It's going to be a bigger star. All right. So just like we did here, now we're going to sew these two on before we sew these together and then put our sides on. So in order to line these up, this is how I would. Because we iron this seam open, we've got this little triangle right there. Okay. When in doubt, turn it over to make sure you're in the right spot. Then we're going to put it into this top part of the flying geese. Hold them together with the pin up and down vertical before you put another pin in to hold it in place. And then you can take your pin out. So again, see this triangle right here? I'm going to put right in the tip, into the tip of the flying geese. Hold it up, meaning hold the pin vertical. You don't want the pin going to one side or bottom or up and down. And then put a pin in before you take the pin out. So when we sew this, we're going to be just over this point to the triangle, or you can sew it from this side and make sure that you don't sew over your X. Okay. Beautiful. Now I'm going to do the other side. Here we go. Beautiful. Okay. Now, let's see. What does it tell me for? It wants you to press these seams open too. Well, I see one spot here that needs to be stitched a little bit better. Right. almost done. Ironing the seams open. It's just cut down on the bulk. And I'll be honest, I've done a lot more of this recently than I have in many, many years. Traditionally, I do not like to iron my seams open because for the most part, it does in certain aspects create a weaker seam. But when I've done a lot of quilts that are have a lot of points, and it really is a better way to stop the bulk and to line up your points. All right. Here we go. Here's one part. Now we're going to iron, or sew, I should say, these onto the sides of these. Making sure I have the right side base fabric on these white on whites is crazy. All right. Almost done. Almost. Not too much longer. One. Two. I'm not quite sure how long this machine is going to last. It's been around for a while. But it is getting old. Now, we ironed all the other seams open in the last step. This one, I think I'm going to iron them out towards the corners. One. And here is two. Here we go. This is our finished block. So now we've got 1, 2, 3 seams to line up on each side of the block, and we'll be done. So again, this should line up pretty simple. And start in the center. Again, putting the needle and the pin in the tip of the triangle, and then in the tip of the flying geese. Fold the pin upright. We take it out. Now this bottom seam is ironed open, and the top seam I've got iron towards the cornerstone blocks. It might feel a little weird, but they should nest pretty easily. I'm going to put this side on. I'm going to go into the tip of this triangle, into the tip on the flying geese. And one more. We just have two seams to sew, and we'll be done. There we go. You're an X over here to make sure that you don't cross over. Here we're going to go just over the tip of the triangle here in the center. And we've got another X right here. And we want to be just to the right of a thread width over. Now we're going to sew the final seam. Can you see this little triangle? So I want to be, this is the only time you want to be towards the left side of the triangle. You just want to sew right over the tip. This one, we want to be just to the right of the X. And hopefully, I didn't cut off any of my points. Let's take a quick look. Nope, looks pretty good. Here we go. Isn't that pretty? There is a lot more we're going to learn. I really like this one. There you go. That's this week's blocks. And next week, we're going to do block 5 and 6. Oh, it's been one a long day already, people. So if you have any questions or comments or have issues, let me know. Post them in the comments and I'll reply. All right. I hope you guys are enjoying it. I can't wait to see your blocks. Please feel free to post them. I can't wait. I hope you have a good rest of your weekend, everybody. You know where I am if you need me. Bye.